It's time to get to our chairman of House Ways and Means, Trey Lamar, in the House. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul.
Like the deer hunting beard there. That's
It's that time of year.
Did you get over the scratchy part of it yet?
Yeah. My wife was telling me last night I need to shave, though, so we'll see.
Well,
its days may be numbered.
I was going to say, if she said that, then the days are numbered. So the next time you're on, it will be a different look. I'm sitting here looking at some of these transfer portals, and I know this is not on the topic that we have here, but you played at Ole Miss.
Oh, I could talk football all day.
What was it, 1962, 63? when you no, seriously, when was that? What was it 10 15 years ago? How long ago?
No, Paul, my college days were 1999 through about 03. And so I have a tenuous college experience. I think I tried to take classes from every university in the state of Mississippi and some JUCOs too. I wouldn't recommend anybody do it the way I did it. I did it the hard way a lot of ways, but I learned a lot and met a lot of good folks.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that when you start looking at it, though, and you look at the transfer portal, and we were just talking about it this morning, and Perez, I'm getting some feedback and echo, if you could turn it down just a little bit. If you go back and you look at the portal, it's kind of that disorganized situation where you got some teams already, and it just opened up, have lost 13 players.
Isn't it wild? I mean, it really is
crazy.
Wild West, call it what you want to call it, but I was listening to, I drove down from Senatobia this morning early, and I was listening to some of that and just catching up on news, and that's a big part of the news this morning is the season's now over and kids are going everywhere, and one of the ramifications is how is this going to affect high school kids and high school recruiting and kids who have put in so much hard work. Are they still going to be recruited the same way they would have been before? Or is it just going to be easier for that Power 5 coach to go to a lower tier, so-called lower tier school and pick a guy who's performed there instead of taking a risk on a high school kid? So those are things we don't know fully yet, but it's concerning.
Well, they did change it and put some dates on there, much like hunting season, where there's some openings for this month and I think up in the spring. But they've got some outs. Some of the outs are if a coach decides to leave and go somewhere, then I guess he can take just about anybody he wants to with him.
That's right. I mean, it's a new normal, and we got to figure it out.
When you put that into the NIL together with some major changes like that, it's revamping the NCAA. It really is.
Totally different, and I come from the home of Northwest Community College. Got to give them a shout here, and there's a real concern of how it's going to affect community college kids, the kids that play at that level. Are they still going to have the same opportunities that they had before? There's some people who would say no, they're not. So a lot of those things are concerning, but it's a new ball game, and we got to get in and figure it out.
All right, let's switch from football to another team sport, which is called legislative session, coming up very soon, and the game is on in January. It'll be here before you know it. And you guys have had a lot of meetings going on in the summertime. And what does it look like for you as far as Ways and Means and this budget, number one?
Well, Paul, we've had a lot of meetings. We've got, again, meetings this morning. JLBC, which is our Joint Legislative Budget Committee, meets for we hope to be our final time this fall, or in 22 later this morning, to adopt a final budget and look at the budget numbers that are the most recent numbers that have come in. And everything indicates that we are still collecting money at an unbelievable record pace above what we're actually spending on government. So do you have the November numbers there, since this is December the 6th? We don't have those yet. I'll be receiving those this morning, and I haven't seen those yet. But I can tell you this: that we are collecting money at $1 billion plus, over and above what we're spending on state government right now.
And this is through sales tax, or?
This is through all tax collections, general revenue tax collections, anything that comes into the general fund of the state of Mississippi, which are multiple sources. The state of Mississippi is collecting in taxes well north of $1 billion a year annually, more than what we are spending on state government.
Chairman, what does that do to the governor's indicating that he would like to push a little bit more on the income tax, the personal income tax, and maybe move that a little bit or revisit that coming up in the 2023 session. Does that do anything to change the minds of some of the House and Senate members, do you think?
Well, I just think it hammers home reality. I mean, I've certainly seen what the governor has said, and you're talking to the House leadership, myself included. We're championing the elimination of the income tax and have been for years. And certainly Governor Reeves has come on board and is pushing that. The reality is we can't just ignore $1 billion+ in extra money. We can't just stick it over in a savings account and pretend like it's not there. So it's got to be dealt with. Two options. We're either going to grow government, which I would say that's not the wisest thing to do that much. I mean, certainly government's got to grow some, but not that much. I mean, we grew government at an astounding rate this past year. We spent more than $300 to $400 million more this past year than we were spending the year before on annual recurring expenses. So we can't. That's an unsustainable pace to grow government. We're not going to continue to do that.
Well, I have three things to tell you on this one, though. When you talk about where we're going to spend some surplus, number one, the public employees haven't had a viable raise in a while. Number two, we have a situation with the prisons that you have the feds breathing down our necks. Something's got to be done with that one. The commissioner at one point talked about the possibility of a new prison that would take maybe 3/4 of the people in Parchment and close some of that dilapidation down. And number three would be mental health centers across the state need some help somewhere in that realm. So those are three areas I think if you were directing a surplus, you would take a look at that.
Paul, I think I would agree with most of what you just said, take exception to the following. There are certainly some areas of public sector employees that we need to continue to look at and address salaries. But we have started that work and made tremendous strides within the last year. Last year we had the largest teacher pay raise in the history of the state. We're now in average teacher raise above the national average, not just the southeastern average.
Well, I understand that, but I'm talking about the rank and file, not the teachers, but people that work all at the agencies. They got a raise, what was it, a couple of 3 years ago, like 1 or 2% or something?
I guess really where I was going with that is we adopted SEC squared, which is a fancy name for the new policy of how we are in the process of bringing our state employees up to the region averages of the southeastern United States. And so that process is starting. Now, we've got some areas we need to improve. You mentioned corrections. That's one of them that we're going to continue to look at. We met with Commissioner Kane this fall and continuing to get information from him about how we can continue to improve our corrections statewide, specifically as it relates to the Parchman prison. There's specific challenges unique to that prison and those grounds that we have to deal with. And there are other ways as well. But we are starting that process. I've had conversations. I just take MDOT employees this year. There are certain MDOT employees that are seeing raises right now that, quite frankly, they have needed for years. And so we've begun that process. We've got more work to do, and I hope we continue to get there.
And again, all of this is funding. Will we see an expansion of the Capitol Police, or is that going to be somebody's going to make an effort for that one way or the other?
I sure hope so, Paul. That's one of the things that I'm most excited about. We've talked about the capital city of Jackson. I'm not from Jackson, but it is my home state's capital city, so it's important to me. And we started. Basically, we took the Capitol Police away from DFA and we gave them to the Department of Public Safety this past year. That's one of the best things we've ever done. That's a real police force. That's what they do. It's not that any DFA was doing anything wrong. It's just that they don't run police forces, and so the Department of Public Safety does. The commissioner there is doing a fantastic job in implementing the new policies that we put into law and getting the Capitol Police force up to where it needs to be. That takes some time when you got to hire numerous police officers, have them trained, leadership in place, and all that's going on. But they are, from everything I hear, doing a fantastic job here in the Capitol Complex District. And I would love to see that effort expanded even more this next session. I've got bills that I'm working on that would continue to help with crime fighting in the capital city, and I'll be happy to talk about that more when we come back.
We'll talk more about that one. One story that goes with that one from the news this morning, the manager appointed by the U.S. Department of Justice to oversee the reforms to the beleaguered water system in Mississippi capital city, said yesterday he hopes to wrap up work in a year or less. His name is Ted Hennepin. Ted outlined his intended time frame during the news conference yesterday, echoing the Justice Department's order appointing him as interim manager of the Jackson water system. The order sets 12 months for Mr. Hennepin to implement 13 projects for improving the system's near-term stability. That was in the news in the last 24 hours. We got more coming up with Trey Lamar next. Let's talk about a couple of other things here on as far as the session's concerned too. Where when you mention that $1 billion surplus, how much does the ARP figure into that, or some of the money coming from Washington?
Well, Paul, I assume when you talk about the ARPA funds, it does not figure into it at all. So that's a separate pot of money, totally distinct from what we're referring to. We're talking about just general fund dollars. These are things like sales tax that's collected when you go shopping. There's things like corporate income tax, the individual income tax that people still pay. Those types of tax collections are what come into the state and fill up the general fund.
And we were trying to get a figure, and I know when Briggs was on, we were trying to get a figure on how much money would be, once this thing is fully implemented at the first stage of the personal income tax, how much money we're going to lose out of the kitty, but that money's coming back into the system. We understand that. But do you think it's about $400 million, or how much do you think it's going to be?
The first phase it was estimated at a little north of $500 million total plan over 4 years. So the first phase, the first year, was just in around the $200 million range.
The way that you guys did it last year, which seeing the surplus has got to make you more confident that you guys certainly did the right thing, House, Senate, and the governor's office. But seeing that the surplus is continuing, even amidst all the things that are going on in Washington and the Biden administration's inflation, has got to make you more confident that we could probably do this a little bit faster and still make it.
I think we could, Paul. I mean, we spent about $6.3 billion on state government and general fund dollars this past year, and we're set to bring in approximately $7.5 billion. So you can do the math. We've got to. The reality is that money exists there. It's the taxpayer dollars. We can either spend it or we can give some of it back to the taxpayers. I believe we should do a combination of both. We've got still got a lot of needs with transportation infrastructure, water sewer infrastructure, although we're making some great strides there. There's a lot of needs at our community college system, our university system, from deferred maintenance and just other infrastructure needs that are out there all over state government and other state agencies. But again, we're just the numbers I just gave you is $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money.
Kind of wonder, because in the budget meetings that you'll be a part of this afternoon or this morning when you leave here, it's got to be a little bit more complicated this year than normally, because, I mean, where are the checks and balances that all of this money is being used the right way? Certainly that money coming in from ARPA and all of that.
Well, every bit of this money is subject to state audit. Every bit of the money has to be spent according to state law. So when the legislature passes a bill appropriating the funds to be spent, if that recipient does not spend the money in a manner that the law intended for it to be spent, then the full weight of the government can come down on you if you don't do right. So from civil penalties and fines and even criminal side of things.
What bills are you going to be pushing forth this year as far as you personally?
Well, we mentioned this when we were going off break a few minutes ago, but I would love to see us take a little more emphasis at the city of Jackson, our capital city, in improving law enforcement needs there. We've got, again, the Capitol Police has gotten started, but we want to put some more officers and some more funding there. The city of Jackson has got to be, the citizens of the state of Mississippi have got to feel like they can come to the capital city of the state and enjoy their time here. I had a phone call or actually a text message from a good friend of mine that does not live in my hometown earlier this week, and he just said, hey, me and my wife have got to be in Jackson for a cheer competition this week. Where should we eat? So we're talking about places to eat. And those people that live all over the state of Mississippi have got to be able to feel like they can come to Jackson and enjoy their time here and be proud of their capital city of the state of Mississippi. And so what I would like to do, and it still needs a lot of work, but you're going to see an effort to have additional prosecutors, additional judges, and other additional law enforcement, as I stated earlier, help here in the Capitol complex area, part of the city. And so we're going to continue to look at that, and hopefully we'll be able to come to a consensus about how we want to do that.
How much of this, and again, we're speaking with Trey Lamar. Trey is the chairman in the House of Ways and Means. Chairman, how much of this is dependent upon the cooperation and the acquiescence of the mayor of the city of Jackson?
From a law enforcement standpoint, that's one reason we put the Department of Public Safety over these, because that is a state agency, and literally they don't have accountability to the city.
Can you expand the territory that's under your domain of Capitol Police without his approval?
Yes, the legislature, if they so desire to do that, can certainly do that.
Regardless of how far they want to?
Well, let me just remind you of this. Every city within the state of Mississippi is a creature of legislative edict. In other words, the legislature creates the cities, not the other way around. The state creates the cities. And so, yes, if the legislative body decides they want to do that, then they can certainly do that.
That was one of the bills. Anything else that you want to mention while we have a chance to mention some of your personal bills?
Well, we got to figure out a way to again, I just think the money situation, the budget, and how spending this money responsibly is going to dominate this next session. There are other things that we need to do. I think we need to have an emphasis, and this is just my personal opinion, an emphasis on safety in our schools. I mean, there's nothing better that government can do is to make sure that our children of Mississippi, when they go to school, when they get on that school bus or mom or dad drops them off at the schoolhouse door, that those parents need to feel like those children are going to be, they may not make an A on their test that day, but they certainly better come home in one piece. And so we need to look at that and make sure that the school children of this state are safe, and make sure that we've done everything in our power to do that.
I know your phone never stops ringing during the summertime as chairman of Ways and Means, but when you get messages from fellow members and cohorts in the House, what are some of their greatest concerns that need to be addressed across the state? Because I know they're always calling you and they need this and they need that.
Well, Paul, it goes back to the old saying that all politics are local. The people that I work with here in Jackson, they want to take care of their people back home. They want to provide a safe environment. They want to take care of law enforcement. They want safe streets. They want better streets, and they want to be proud of the place that they call home. And so a lot of times that's what it's about. I mean, occasionally there's other issues that come up, but that's mainly what we deal with. And we're looking forward to doing that. We'll have a lot of extra money. Even if we do continue to cut taxes, we will have a lot of extra money to spend on needs across the state. We just got to make sure we do it in a wise manner. If
you look at the correlation between the simplicity of you want to cut crime, you just got to put more people on the streets, you have to have a better leader do this. I think you can get it from what Andy Gibson did over at the fair. I mean, you put more police there. You put some common sense rules and regulations. After 9 o'clock, if you're a juvenile or if you're under 18 years old, you can't get in there without a parent. There's things like that. Having a cell there, letting people know that if you come in, you're going to get slapped, where you can park, where you can't park. And those are the type of things that you have to address. But you hit on something else, and I'll give you the final word when we come back. And I think it's overlooked. But the court system, which you know a lot about, the court system has to have some adjustments. They've got to have some help. Would you agree?
I do.
We'll talk more about that. Final segment coming up with Trey Lamar, House of Representatives, District 8, and also chairman of House Ways on. So let's get the final thoughts on this as far as where we are and where we're going.
Well, Paul, we got a lot of legislature got a lot of important decisions to make as we go through the next few months. It's what to do with the money. Do we return more of it to the taxpayers, which we're already doing some of it? We continue to invest in infrastructure across the state and law enforcement. Another point of emphasis, I believe, and I hope you'll see us look at is rural health care. What else can we do in the area of rural health care and our rural hospitals to help those that are out there trying to care for our folks and do it in a conservative manner. So
we had Tim on the other day, and Tim was talking about the possibility of some type of rebate program or that's in the works. Or
I don't know what it would look like, but we've got still got a good bit of ARPA funds left that could be used in that arena. And again, I just mentioned the surplus in state funds. There are certain hospitals that are doing very well in the state in our more affluent areas. But there's a lot of them that just aren't. That's just the reality that we're dealing with, and a lot of those exist in rural Mississippi, which is near and dear to my heart. And so we certainly want to look at that and see how we can help them.
You made the decision to run again?
I have. As you know, Speaker Gunn has announced recently that he will be stepping down after this next year. We'll have new leadership in the Mississippi House of Representatives, and I look forward to that. I look forward to being a part of that. Representative Jason White is a dear friend of mine. We came in together almost 12 years ago, and look forward to.
Does he have your support for Speaker?
He certainly does, and I look forward to him assuming that role after Speaker Gunn steps down.
All right, my man. Well, look, I thank you so very much. I know you've got to get out of here, and you've got a whole series of fantastic meetings. Those meetings broadcast or on the internet?
That's certainly my understanding. They're supposed to.
They are. I think they are on the internet. I always get a notification, and I try to watch them, but after about 10 or 15 minutes, they get a little boring.
You're talking about numbers, lots of numbers.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to be in there with ADD after a while, but it is what it is, and I'm glad you guys are doing that, not me. It's always good seeing you, man. You and the family have a very, very Merry Christmas, and thank you for taking the time to come by.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you and all of Mississippi. Look forward to the next few weeks and spending time with family.